The top 10 player lists are making a return to um, the channel after a long hiatus. Well, really just about 2 years, and I decided, let me bring them back. Why not? So, starting with the quarterbacks, similar criteria to what my lists were a couple years back. I'm looking not only at the season that just passed, but their seasons in the past, a little bit of projecting into the future, how their team did with the player, how the team did without the player in case he was injured, and obviously his overall statistics and other little things. So let's get underway. First, I'm going to start with the guys who are the honorable mention guys, the guys who did not get in, the guys who you could say are on the outside looking in. So the guys who did not make the cut, who are just on the outside of the top 10, Ben Roethlisberger, Baker Mayfield, Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan, and Carson Wentz. I think certain guys like Ben Roethlisberger, you could go either way with him and the guy I have at number 10. When I was making the list, he didn't come to mind. When I was constructing the list, thinking about stuff, I was like, I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I was leaving anybody off the list. I felt like I had the good 10 players. It wasn't until after I took a good look at it and started thinking about quarterbacks for the honorable mention part of the list, and I was like, oh, Ben Roethlisberger didn't make it in. I was like, he's fine not being there. As for the other guys on the list, Baker Mayfield, I think that another good season, and I could see him sneaking into the list. Matthew Stafford and Matt Ryan are guys who, you can consider top 10 guys, but every once in a while have those seasons where you're like, they're good quarterbacks. I don't know if they're top 10 quarterbacks. And Carson Wentz hasn't really been the same since injury. I mean, he's had flashes of his old self, but hasn't been there yet. So that's why I did not include him in the top 10 unless I think he could, with a good season, he could find his way back in the list. So the first guy I have at number 10, the number 10 quarterback going into the 2019 season, I think it's Jared Goff. I think that with the exception of his first season with Jeff Fisher, he has played really well throughout his career. I think you should very much consider him a top 10 quarterback. His numbers have gotten better throughout his career. Like I said, you can flip him and Roethlisberger. That's who I would have. He can be 10 or 11. You can go either way with those guys. I talked about this in my playoff prediction video during the playoffs, whether I was somewhat uncertain about Jared Goff and if he could, rise to the occasion, and he did throughout the playoffs, with the exception of the Super Bowl. But then nobody really played well in that Super Bowl. But I think 10's a good spot. I could see him moving up if he just overall increases his numbers a bit and continues to play the way he has these last couple seasons. At number 9, I have Cam Newton. Cam Newton has played really well throughout his career. He is a threat to pass the football, to run the football. The Panthers played really good when Cam Newton was healthy. The moment he got hurt against the Steelers, there was a big decline. I mean, they were going to be a playoff team possibly, and then it all just fell apart. And it had to do with the fact that Cam Newton was not healthy. When Cam Newton is healthy, he has, he puts up good numbers. Also, when he has the good offense around him, because he's had those seasons where he's looked just good, not great. I don't see him, going up any higher, but I think that 9 is a good solid spot with the stats that he's put up these last couple seasons, stats that he's put up this season. I think that there could be some maneuvering if he plays well, and he can move up on the list in the near future. At number 8, I have Andrew Luck. In his first season back since all those injuries, he played really well. It was a good example of, what he can do when he is healthy and has an actual offensive line and weapons around him. He's a really good quarterback. He's a big part of the reason why the Colts made the playoffs this season and why they're looking like a playoff contender going into the season. He played really well. I believe he won Comeback Player of the Year. I'm not sure. And if he didn't, he was definitely a nominee. And if he wasn't, he should have been. He should have won all those things. He played really well. His numbers look good. I think you could even have considered him for MVP possibly. And look of what happens when you get a guy of his caliber up. He turned the Colts into a playoff team along with other players like Darius Leonard and some offense and the offensive linemen improving. I think that he's only going to get better and he'll move up definitely on the list. I think he's going to, put up good numbers this season. At number 7, Deshaun Watson. Now, Watson is another guy who had an injury, and he came back and he looked great. Is the reason why the Texans made the playoffs, because the Texans don't really have an offensive line. But he was able to, take his team to the playoffs without the offensive line. Him and Andrew Luck, he can flip-flop spots, I think, just because I know how the injuries to that Texans team and the fact that they were able to work around that and still have a great season and make the playoffs is why I ranked Deshaun Watson a little higher, putting up great numbers, and I see him moving up on this list as well. At number 6, I have a bit of a shocker, you could say. It is Aaron Rodgers, a guy who most people would probably consider a top 5 quarterback. It's kind of crazy not to consider him a top 5 quarterback. If you look at his stats, they're still really good. Now, he has struggled a bit because of injuries. And so that's why, he's played, with the exception, I believe, a season ago, not the season we had, but the season before that, where he, I think it was the Anthony Barr injury, where his numbers were down because he was out for that long. For the most part, he's played all 16 games, except that because he plays hurt, his play isn't as great. Overall, he's still a reason why the Packers are considered a playoff contender, and at times why they're considered a Super Bowl contender. And I think that hurts Aaron Rodgers a little bit because there's a lot of added hype to him, and it's added pressure, and it makes Rodgers seem like he can't live up to that hype, when in reality it's not that he can't live up to that hype, it's that the team around him isn't that great. But his stats, for the most part, look great. I think that you could put him in at 5. I think 6 is a good solid spot. It just depends what your opinions of the quarterbacks I have ahead of them are. But I think that 6 is a good solid spot here for Aaron Rodgers. At number 5, I have Russell Wilson. I think he just he is a great player even when he doesn't have an offensive line. Granted, I think he struggled a bit when he didn't have an offensive line, but Russell Wilson's whole game is run around for like a good solid couple seconds and then just throw the football up. And that's why, and somebody will catch it out, and you'll have just some random receiver who just happens to be in the right place at the right time, and he ends up scoring a touchdown. But Russell Wilson has the numbers. He's a proven winner these last couple seasons, and is a guy who you have to consider for MVP almost every season, because he is the reason why the Seahawks are good. The reason the Seahawks made the playoffs is part because of Russell Wilson and how good he is, because he is able to extend the play and have that big play factor. I very much consider him a top 5 quarterback. I think that at times you could say he gets forgotten sometimes, but like I said, he's a proven winner. He's won a Super Bowl. He does a lot with his arm and his legs. And I think 5 is a good solid spot. I could see him possibly moving up in the future. it just, depends. But I think that 5 is a good solid spot for Russell Wilson. At number 4, and this might be a bit of a shock to some people because many would probably consider him number 1, mainly due to recency bias and because this is, the big name right now. This is the guy that everybody's, trying to be like. Everybody's trying to be this guy, Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes is not a great quarterback and that he's not a, number 1, number 2. I think he is a great quarterback with a bright future. But there is a recency bias. I mean, just because we've seen him recently, everything he does is considered to be amazing and great and something that, oh, we've never seen this before when we've seen it before. Like I said, look, he threw for like 50 touchdowns or if not close. You could make a case that he could go for the touchdown record this year. But Patrick Mahomes, 4 is a good solid spot. He's only going to get better. He'll probably take the number 1 spot within a year or so. But you also got to see, can he sustain? Look, he's going to have a lot of momentum, a lot of hype going into this season. Will he be able to live up to that hype? He's got a lot of pressure now. People are now expecting big things from him. Last season, they expected him to be good, see what he can do now that Alex Smith is gone. And so he exceeded everybody's expectations. But now he has a chance. He's going to have to try to live up to what he was last season. It's going to be kind of hard. It's not going to be easy. But I think that 4 is a good solid spot. You could make a case for number 3, especially with the guy I have. You could flip-flop them, but I'm not putting him at 1 or 2 just yet. I think that 4 is a good spot for Patrick Mahomes. At number 3, I have Phillip Rivers, who had a great season. He's been a great quarterback. He's been solid for his entire career, has just never been able to win in the playoffs. He's never been in that big stage. I thought that that the last season was going to be that time, but you run into the Patriots and no one is going to beat the Patriots. But I think it's a good solid spot. Like I said, you could flip-flop him and Mahomes. If you want to put him at Phillip Rivers at 4, you can. If you want to put, you can trade spots. But I think that with the type of season that Phillip Rivers had, I think it's deserving of this number 3 spot. I think, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. I mean, he's getting older. He's obviously not, he's going to stay where he's at. He's not going to get better. I mean, nobody gets better with age. Father Time eventually catches up to you. But his numbers were good last season. Played good. I think that if the Chargers are going to, contend, they're going to need him to be good. I think he has, a good offense around him, and he has a great opportunity to, make a push for in the playoffs and possibly a Super Bowl. I don't really see him moving up on this list. I think that he's going to float around here unless he has like a 60 touchdown season or something. I don't know. Phillip Rivers at 3 is I think is a solid spot for him. At number 2 is a guy who I would consider a top 3 quarterback of all time. It's Drew Brees here at number 2. His numbers have, been great his entire career. His numbers have been great those last couple seasons. His touchdowns were down, I believe, this season, but that's more because of how good Alvin Kamara is and the fact that they will give him the football and the way that their offense is now. But for the most part, he has a good completion percentage, has a good yardage, doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, has a good passer rating. He's, he has most of the records, has a lot of records, and if he had more, Super Bowls, you would consider him the greatest quarterback of all time. You could argue, but he doesn't have he only has the one Super Bowl, so that'll keep him around 1-2. But I am in my book, he is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and I think in most people's eyes, he is. Yeah, I think that he has the playoff. He's has overall been a great quarterback his entire career. I think 2 is a good spot. We obviously know who's going to be at number 1, but I think that I guess if the guy at number 1 didn't win a lot, you could consider him the number 1. You can consider Drew Brees the number 1 quarterback, but the guy ahead of Drew Brees just wins too much, and there's really nothing anybody can do about it. So yeah, at number 2, I have Drew Brees. At number 1, we all know who it is. It's Tom Brady. Like I said, he just wins too much. People have made a big deal about how he's declining, but when I saw his numbers, I didn't see a decline. I've seen everything's really stayed the same. Yeah, his numbers are going to look a slightly bit different, but they don't look too different to the point where I would consider Brady to be on the decline. I think that eventually he might decline a little bit, but he's still the best quarterback in the league. He wins a lot. He is clutch. He does everything you want your quarterback to do and everything you wish your quarterback was. And I think that he has earned the number 1 spot basically until he retires at this point, which, like I've said before, is probably not going to be until he's like 50. So yeah, that's my top 10 quarterback list this season. Any disagreements, I guess, talk about in the comment section. Add your top 10 quarterbacks this season. And yeah, more top 10s to come. Next is top 10 running backs.